Hello, hello. This is Jeanette Chasworth, the Color Whisperer, where we talk about all things home and healing. So I'm here today, and we are going to talk about the 4th of July a little bit because it's here, right? We're just right there. And a couple of days, it's the 4th of July weekend, and there's going to be lots of parties and everything. And so we're going to spend a little time talking about that. So, how many of you were alive when we had the 200-year celebration back in 1976? Now, I was just a little kid, but I remember that was a big one. People were so excited, so very excited about that. And there was, it just was the 4th of July like no other. And well, maybe the one right after COVID ended. Actually, the first one with COVID, that was the first one during COVID was quite a spectacular thing too. We didn't, our city wasn't allowed to have fireworks, but a lot went off. I don't think I've ever seen so many fireworks, honestly. So there was a lot of people doing fireworks. And going back to the 200-year, do you realize we're only a few years away from 250 years? How did that happen? But I wonder if they're going to do a huge celebration like they did for the 250 as they did for the 200. Because there's a lot of people that were not alive at 200. And, a lot of us aren't going to be alive at 300. Anyway, so what are you doing for 4th of July? Are you going out? Are you having parties? Oh, I'm going to share with you a joke. So this is an old joke, but it's really fun. And there aren't too many 4th of July jokes. At least I've never heard them. Maybe they are. So this is one I heard a very long time ago. This American goes to England, and nothing is suiting him. He's got a tour guide, and it doesn't matter what's going on. He's like, oh, this doesn't work right. This isn't good enough. This isn't, da da da. All day he's complaining how uncivilized the English people are, and they don't do this and they don't do that, and da da da. Not a good tourist because he just really wanted to get back at home, which is not why you go touring to begin with. So at the end of the day, he looks at the guy and says, you people are so uncivilized. I bet you don't even celebrate Thanksgiving. Tour guide says, yep, we do. Every 4th of July. Okay. So anyway, that's my 4th of July joke. Sorry. Not sure where that came from. Mark, I need to get some water. I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead and get some water. That's okay. I'll tell people about the 4th of July and the fact that I'm actually going to be doing an event tomorrow. So tomorrow is going to be the Eno Festival. I do it every year, and I jokingly say that is actually not just the 4th of July, but one big birthday party for me, because it is actually this year on the 1st and the 4th. It is in the past been sometimes a 3-day activity. Sometimes it's a 2-day activity, and it is at one of our state parks and all along those lines, not the one that is behind us. That's actually Duke Gardens, but it's an area very much like that. It's got a river. It's got a grove area. It's actually, that'll be where I'll be at, the grove stage. There's also a stage that's in a meadow area and another stage that's by the river that I just mentioned. So it's usually about 3 or 4 stages. And I like to jokingly tell the folks that are there, thousands of them, that they think they're there for the 4th of July and the big things that are going on with the 4th of July, and they think they're there to celebrate the environment, and they think they're there to enjoy the art and the music. No, they're really there to celebrate me. It's my big birthday party. So that's why I said it's my big birthday party. So
that's awesome. And the 4th of July on the East Coast is so different than the 4th of July over here. because you guys have a much deeper connection to the revolution
Right.
than we do. Because I mean, over here, an old house. I mean, my house was built in 1926, and that's considered really old.
Right.
And that's not so old where you are. And you
Well, there's
guys have the buildings and the tours, and this is part of your everyday life is the revolution.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, revolution, slavery, a number of other things. So the Juneteenth wasn't that long ago. The celebration for that
Yeah.
about 2 weeks ago, and all in that space. But yeah, a lot of times people will go out, and there's sometimes because not every state has the same rules about fireworks. So sometimes they will go to states that are more liberal to get the kind of fireworks that they want. And I do want people to be safe because I mean, you'll probably start hearing. I know that we started hearing them the last day or two. People are sometimes starting to their celebrations early, so they are getting their fireworks going and all of that. And actually, there is amateur baseball called USA Baseball. I think that's some of the college folks, and they are actually in town up until the 4th. And then, if I remember correctly, and talking to my friend Jatovi, who works for the Durham Bulls, the Bulls will actually be in town on the 4th of July. So there's usually fireworks at a number of places. I think they do some at County Stadium, and they definitely do them at the new ballpark that is not that new. It's been around for multiple decades now, but it is the newer of the two ballparks. So it's not the ballpark that the Bull Durham movie was shot at. That is the old ballpark, and that's still used as well. But it'll be interesting because I do know that there are a variety of places that are doing fireworks. I think in Raleigh they might be doing them at Dorothea Dix, which is a converted hospital, and all in that space. But there's still going to be fireworks left and right, and there'll probably be some parades and some other activities going on with the 4th as well. So it'll be interesting and fun to watch. And of course, in some cases, they'll even read part of the Declaration of the Independence as part of their 4th of July celebrations. I think that that's something they do every year as part of the ENO that I just mentioned. They do recite some of the things that are principles within that and everything. So, and I do know that other places do that as well. So it'll be interesting to see how people celebrate, whether they're in the West Coast, whether you are, whether they're on the Southeast where I am, or even up in the Northeast where I have some friends in New York, in the Midwest, and a number of other places. And like you said, sometimes even people celebrate overseas. Because I remember when my cousin was stationed in the military, they would sometimes do 4th of July celebrations, whether he was in the Middle East or whether he was in some of our European stations and stuff along those lines. So a lot of times the military, because they can't be home celebrating 4th of July,
Yeah.
they incorporate it into some of the things that they are doing in wherever they are stationed at.
I got to do 4th of July in Boston one year.
Oh,
That
wow.
was amazing. Now talk about a city that goes all out.
Mhm.
They really, really do. Of course, it's Boston, right? So
Right.
they have a great connection with it. And here it's not that we don't celebrate it, but we don't have as many, people enjoy it, but it's not the dressing up. It's you don't get as much of that. You don't, we go each little city, not every city, a lot of cities do their own firework display. My city does a nice firework display. They shut down the main road, and everybody goes and sits right by Library Park, and the fireworks go up, and then you can go up into I live at the foothills, and so if you go up into the mountains a little bit, you can see city after city after city. It's just amazing. My ex did barbershop singing,
Oh, wow.
and we got to go through that. They hired his barbershop group to be entertainment at a party, and it was right overlooking the Rose Bowl.
Oh, wow.
And from there we could see all the fireworks from the Rose Bowl, but we could see them all throughout the valley. It was amazing.
Well, that's one of the interesting things is that whenever there is a 4th of July activity, people are oftentimes trying to find the best vantage point. I know that at one time when there was, we've gotten away to some degree from smaller malls. We've now gone into more of the super malls, but at a time that there was a couple of small malls around South Square and Northgate here in Durham, and both of those malls are actually gone. But people would sometimes go into the one of those, I think it was South Square, was actually on a hill, so people would sometimes go there to get a better vantage point. There are some parking decks that exist here in this area, so sometimes people will use that to get a better vantage point. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I literally had come back from work. It might have even been the Eno, and I was like, "Where am I going to watch the fireworks from?" And I went up to one of the parking decks up there, and there was a few other folks that had the same idea. There was a couple that was up there. I think he was in construction or something like that. There was a couple of other folks that were there that had, including some families that had thought that that would be the best vantage point, because depending on where the parking deck is or how it's structured, you might even get a view of multiple fireworks, because depending on which side you are looking at, you might get a vantage point of a multitude of fireworks, not just in your own city, but in adjacent cities. Because I know that I'm pretty sure that I saw some that were down there toward Wake County, which is toward Raleigh, and it might have been the ones from Cary, and I might have even seen the ones from Chapel Hill, because both of those are fairly close by and everything. So it's always interesting to see those. Try to get a higher vantage point so that you can see a multitude of the fireworks that are going on.
Yeah, that's what I did that first COVID year, and they're saying no celebrations, and people kind of revolted. At least here they did, and said, "I'm sorry, that's not going to happen."
Yeah.
And so I did. I went up into the mountains a little bit, and it was just amazing. It was, and because a lot of the streets, people weren't in the streets.
Mhm.
We had just the next street over from me. They were doing a lot of fireworks,
Wow.
and I heard later that there were some police departments that chose not to do anything about that. Um, I don't know how true that is, but that was the rumor, is that there were so many fireworks going off, and they were all individual. And so we just went up into the mountains a little bit, and we could see for miles and miles around, and it was really just beautiful. And
Like you said, a lot of times that's what happens with the fireworks, is you get the ones that are done by the professionals. I actually had a
right,
friend that was an artist, and that was, I mean, the visual artist, I can't remember her medium, but her family actually was in that pyrotechnic field. So they actually did some work in the fireworks field and all along those lines. So she had done a multitude of events around the country and everything. And unfortunately, we've lost touch with each other. But I do remember that was part of her family legacy and all in that space. But then you have folks that are one of the professional ones that are trained and know how to handle it. Like I said, the ballpark, the Durham Bulls, definitely hires a company that has got that kind of experience. But a lot of people like to have the fun with their families. And like I said, I hope that if they are doing that, they are being safe and everything. But I know even here in the apartment complex that I live at last year, and I want to say the year before, there were a number of folks that had gotten the different smaller fireworks, and sometimes they weren't all that small. I would do them from their house and nearby, and that can be fun watching them like them. Hopefully they haven't done it, and in that case they had done it the correct training so they didn't hurt themselves and all in that space. But it was definitely fun seeing people have that kind of personal enjoyment with the fireworks as well, and not just the corporate fireworks.
there is truly an art to putting all the fireworks together.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen some amazing shows where they really took a lot of time putting the music and the fireworks together, and those people who do that, and the timing to get all of them lit at the right time, I can't even. It's true talent.
Oh, it's a true challenge. Like I said, the friend that has family member that had done that work was describing it, and yes, it definitely very a lot of specifics have to be done. You have to do a lot of knowledge of the conditions, and sometimes the conditions don't always want to cooperate. So unfortunately, there have been times, and hopefully that won't be the case this year, that the fireworks were canceled because you can't do it in certain kind of weather like rain and thunderstorms and a number of other things. So you also have to be aware of your surrounding and some of the outside forces than in terms of the weather and nature that can impact how the
We
fireworks are.
don't have that problem over here. At least not in LA. We've never had rain on the 4th of July.
Well, there is that song, "It Never Rains in Southern California."
Well, we've had a lot of rain in June. I've never seen so much rain this June. But yeah, we never July, August. It's not like you guys get rain year round. We don't.
Yeah.
When I was little, my next door neighbor used to have a really nice 4th of July party. And they did a lot of like, what are the swirling boards? They would do those. We'd have the little wormy things, we did a few sparklers, and they shot off some fireworks, and they'd done it for years and years and no problems. And then we did it one year and the police came and like, you can't do this. And we're like, we've been doing it for, they've been doing it for like 10 years. So, well, why not? And he said, turns out the neighbor on the other side of us was a cop.
Well,
so he was always invited and he was always there. So as long as he was there, it was fine. But he moved that year. And so we didn't have, the resident cop so we couldn't shut it all down. We had no idea.
Yeah, a lot of times we don't know the rules that exist in our individual towns and all of that. So we have to be aware of that because they do have different rules, and some will enforce more than others. Like I said, I've definitely seen people do it in their apartment complexes and things along those lines. And the other thing is, it's interesting how the holidays have different thought patterns, because I know a lot of times people will go to the beach on Memorial Day, which is considered like the official start of summer, even though it's actually in May and summer starts in late June and everything. But the 4th of July, you also have sometimes some people that go to the beach and other places, because one thing that happens in the 4th of July is, depending on how the 4th falls, you could have a super long weekend. Because I'm thinking that there are some people that probably left work today. Maybe they took a half day on a Friday, and they won't be coming back till Wednesday, because the 4th is on Tuesday. So there are some people that are probably getting ready to have a 5, if not a 6-day vacation, and all in that space, just because of the way that the 4th fell this year.
I think there's a lot of 4-day holidays. I think there's a lot of people taking Monday off, and and really, I mean, I work for myself, so it doesn't matter so much. But I would hate to go into work on Monday. If I was working and it would be hard. Yeah.
It would be hard, but that's where I'm getting a little confused. I got a call and everything, because usually the banks are closed on the 4th, but the 4th being on Tuesday, I'm imagining that the banks are going to have to come in and work on Monday, which means that it's going to be kind of like a stop and start kind of vacation for those that are in the banks and other professions, which means they'll have their regular weekend, because some of the people that work in the banks and these kind of institutions will take the day off, but the institution itself is probably going to be, of course, closed on the weekend unless they have Saturday hours, but then they'll be closed on the weekend, then they'll open on Monday, and then they'll close again on Tuesday, which that's kind of like that stop and start kind of activity. And I think it will be similar next year, because I want to say that, because if I remember correctly, it's usually 365 days, and 52 weeks would be plus 1. So it'd be 52, it would be 364 plus 1. So I'm pretty sure that since we're not coming up on a leap year, that next year the 4th of July will be even further into the middle of the week, because I think it'll fall on Wednesday on 2023.
That doesn't feel so bad though, but there's something about Tuesday,
Yeah, exactly, because particularly, like you said, it doesn't feel that bad. Like, let's say that it's Wednesday, then you have the regular weekend, then you go to work Monday and Tuesday, then you have your Wednesday 4th of July, and then you got Thursday and Friday. So it's kind of like in the middle. So it's, like you said, not as bad as that whole Monday Tuesday thing. I actually kind of like it when it falls on, and I think that's 5 or 6 years down the line, when it falls on Mondays, because then you just have a solid 3-day weekend,
right?
Or when it falls on Friday. And I think Friday won't be that far away either, because depending on how the leap year plays out, that'll either be that might be 2024. So that might be next year, because that might be the leap year that we will have that on a Friday and everything. So that's not too bad, because that would be, the opposite way of the weekend going, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And
there you go.
Yeah.
As a solopreneur, I kind of work when I want to work. I mean, I have to work, yes, but it's like I'll be working Monday, but there's so many things I have to do. So there's work, there's light work, there's all kinds of things. So I will be working Monday, but it's not going to be hard working
Well,
Monday.
like I said, I'll be working on my birthday on the first, but that's my choice because it's that big birthday party that they throw for me. I did see that we're in the middle of hot summer, and there have been a couple of times that the summers have been milder than others, but it is definitely not mild currently. I think it's probably in the 90s and maybe even pushing in the upper 90s. And of course, the humidity is no joke and all along those lines. So sometimes, even when we do the festival, sometimes you've got to scramble. I actually might not mind being in the Grove now that I think about it because the metal stage is worse because you're out there in the elements and all in that space. But there is a distinct possibility. Hopefully, it won't happen, or it'll happen after the festivities have stopped, which would be like in the evening time and everything. But the weatherman is saying that there is a distinct possibility that there might be some raindrops falling on the festivities as well. So that's something you always have to be concerned about as well, because the 4th of July is a great holiday, but unfortunately, it also falls in the middle of, at least here in North Carolina and in the South, in the middle of hurricane season. So they're not talking that kind of weather, but they are still talking some rain and other stuff. And I do remember there have been a couple of times where both the 4th of July and definitely later festivals in September have been impacted by a storm that has either come up during that time or a storm that has the impact of the weather and the fallen trees and everything have happened
you
as
know,
the event was going on and all.
for a California girl, I can't comprehend hurricane season. Like you have a whole season for your natural disaster that just boggles my brain. we we talk about we we talk about earthquake weather, but I mean it's kind of it's a little bit of a myth. But you guys actually have a season, like months that
Yes,
are hurricane season. Like
yes, we
most
have a hurricane season. I know
nights with
it's
that.
hard for the California lady to relate to, but yeah, we have the whole hurricane season, and it covers like a lot of the eastern seaboard because it does go all the way up to, they don't get hit as much, but it does go all the way up to, like, I would argue, New York and New Jersey, and definitely all of the southeastern seaboard down to like Louisiana and Texas, because we know that a lot of them have been hit by stuff during that season, including Katrina way back when and everything. But yeah, it's always interesting. And I have never figured out, I was joking and you'll get a kick out of this. I think that we had Hurricane Brett recently, and I was actually calling a buddy of mine because I was teasing him because I was like, I knew this hurricane was going to be, or tropical storm, I think it was a tropical storm, was going to be trouble because it was named Brett. And then Brett was like, no, the reason that it didn't cause as much damage is because that storm has one T. I have two T's in my name and everything. So he got it get calculated. He's like, no, they misspelled it and all along those lines. And I want to say that the new disturbance, because they give them all different names, that is possibly brewing up out in the East Coast, is named Cindy. Don may be on the way. So I sometimes will jokingly say, if you had a ex that was that kind of had that name, then you might not be a big fan of that particular storm because it might remind you of that person, and you might think that it might have the same kind of impact that that person had on you and everything. So from a psychological standpoint, since they named them after people's names, I'm going like, if somebody was to, and I'm just going to pick a name that is random, and that I've never dated anybody with this particular name and everything. But if you were talking to somebody that was named Jane, and Jane had been less than nice to you and everything, and then they said Hurricane Jade is on the way, you might be going like, I'm not really feeling Hurricane Jade because I remember what the real Jade did to me and everything. So just my own thoughts.
How do they pick the names then? I wonder if they're picking names of people that they want to, that they don't like.
That could be a good question, and that is a good question. I might have to look it up and see how they pick the names because I have never known that. Even though, ironically, you don't know this, I think I mentioned on some other shows and everything. But that was one of the careers that I had considered. I've definitely been doing event planning for a number of years, and I've definitely been in the journalism space, which I am still in with Pod TV and everything. But as a youngster, I had a barometer, I had my farmer's almanac, and I had a number of other things that were connected to weather because I thought that being a weatherman would be one of the coolest jobs out there. And I wasn't so much thinking of the TV weatherman as I was just a meteorologist in general. So that was one of the careers that I had considered going into and all of that space. And I actually had like a little small mimeograph newspaper, and using the Farmer's Almanac, I did a little bit of weather forecasting. And I wanted to say, using some of that farmer's knowledge and old wives' tales and a number of other things, including my barometer and wind vane, that I think I had a better accuracy rate than the weatherman. So I might have been doing good as I want to say that was back when I was 10 or 12 or something. It was before we moved to Warren County, which is northern North Carolina in the country. But I'm pretty sure I was somewhere between 9 and 11 that I was doing that and everything. And apparently, like I said, I think I had some pretty decent track record there.
The only time I looked at the Farmer's Almanac was when I got married, because we wanted to see if it meant that we would have rain that day. And it said no. And we had rain out. Rain is, I mean, it wasn't rain. But we did have some rain the day before. And they were calling because we had an outdoor wedding. And they're like, oh, do you want to, rearrange this? And da-da. And I was like, no, we're going to keep it. We're going to keep it. And it ended up being a beautiful day. So
it was a beautiful day.
It was a little scary, but it was, the anticipation, leading up to it. And you're always nervous anyway. So.
Listen, I did something in that process that didn't help anything. I remember when my cousin, who is now celebrated multiple years of being married, and her kids are now well into their 20s and everything. As a matter of fact, I think one of them, they even pushing not that far from the 30s and all along those lines. But they asked me to help in the entertainment section. And so they asked me to recruit a DJ, which I did. The DJ kind of bailed on me. So that wasn't putting me in exactly the good side of the thing. If anything, I was in the doghouse because I had recruited this person and all along those lines. And I don't remember the reasoning they gave me, if they even gave me a reason for their bailing on me and everything. But I thought I had somebody lined up, and I don't think that cousin Tanya has totally forgotten that altogether, but she's also forgiven me on a lot of other things. So I think that I'm still in good shape, but I do know that that was not the most pleasant experience. And I want to say they're coming up on their, if it wasn't this year, it's coming up on their 30th anniversary. So she's
awesome.
By the fact that I couldn't find them the DJ, or the DJ bailed, and we had to do some other stuff music wise, has not stopped their success of their
well, I think every wedding has to have something go wrong.
Oh yes.
Every wedding has to have something. And my wedding, now here's one, as an event planner, how would you ever predict this?
Uh-huh.
So the main thing that went wrong at my wedding, they shut the off-ramp down.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it wasn't a huge deal, but it meant we were starting late and everything. And it's like people got lost, and I guess they were calling. So it didn't affect me as much as it affected the venue. But it was like, I'm getting ready, and they're like, they shut the off ramp down. Like, oh, okay. There's nothing we could do at that point. We couldn't call everybody, and it just was. So anyway, so that was my big fiasco.
Well, those fiascos, like you
But
said,
you can't plan for everything,
you can't plan for everything, not at all. And by the way, you were saying something that you find interesting. I'm going to bring it up and everything, but you're asking about the storms and the hurricanes. And the first day of the Atlantic hurricane season was June 1st, and the first hurricane that hit in 2023 was named Arlene. I think Arlene's already hit and didn't do that much damage, and apparently they already set. So the 2023 list will start with Arlene and will end with Whitney. And apparently they use the same names, and they're rotated every 6 years. So in 2029, we'll get the same storms, and they used to be chosen more randomly and not assigned premeditatedly. For example, a storm that hit a boat named Angie and ruined its mast was called Angie's Hurricane, according to the organization. And for hundreds of years, storms were named after saints' days. And in order to keep the storms organized, meteorologists started following an alphabetical system, with an A name being given to the first hurricane of the season, a B name to the second, and so on. And they originated the name list in 1953. And, I'm really worried about this because it says that until 1979, guess what? Because I think there might have been, and I can see this because there was a time that science was not always the most fair in terms of the kind of folks that got the jobs. So until 1979, only women's names were used. So when the list in 1949, they began
alternating. We are a storm. We are a storm, right?
Well, and barely so, because they said in 1979 they began alternating women's and men's names. So their 6 recycled lists have been in rotation since 1979. So I do know that there are some male-oriented storms at all in that space. So definitely,
boats are usually a she, and usually the sailors refer to the ocean as a sea. Right. And so it would make sense, and that they would call the storms a she. Although, I know I've been a storm a few times in my life, and
and guess what? Just like in couples, you can also get retired, because apparently the center has a list of hurricane names that have been retired. Notable ones include Katrina, the deadly storm.
Yeah, because we don't want another Katrina. No.
That was replaced with Katia. That was replaced with Katia. So unless Katia does something damage.
Really? Yeah. This is like the same name, isn't it? It's Katrina just a different version of the same name.
Well, they did change Floyd, because I remember Floyd also hit this area as well. And Floyd, which hit in 1999, was replaced with Franklin. So Floyd and Franklin at least a little bit different. And they said that in 2017, Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Nate. 2021, Ida was the only name replaced, and with that list is used again in 2027, the name Imani, which that's ironic, because as I know from knowing a little bit of the faith and the principles of Kwanzaa, Imani means faith. So we're going to call a storm Faith. That doesn't sound like a good idea for the name of a storm. And
you better have faith that it doesn't hit you then, right? Well,
that is true.
That's what we'll just put a little twinge on it there. Is faith that it's not going to do any harm.
Yep, that sounds good. And earlier this year, the Ian was replaced with Idris, and Fiona was replaced with Farah after the deadly storm wreaked havoc in 2022. So we're replacing Fiona with, I don't know how a lot of guys are going to, particularly those of us that grew up in the 70s or the 80s, are going to feel about that because of Farrah Fawcett. So I'm not sure how folks are going to be feeling about that name change and everything.
Yeah, I knew they went alphabetically, but I didn't know they reused the names.
They reused the names. There aren't 26 names on the list because they leave out some letters. So you will not see apparently a storm with Q, U, X, Y, or Z, because those letters are left out. So you skip around, and there are certain letters that are left out and all of that. Now, you said earlier that it's not as much of a thing in the West and everything, and I get what you're saying, but I also know that while y'all may not have what we call the Atlantic hurricane season or the hurricane season, I do think that I have heard of storms that have come off the Gulf Coast and definitely the Pacific Coast as well. So I think that sometimes these storms do come off of those two coasts as well. So while y'all might not have a name for them, I do know that even when I watch the meteorologists, they sometimes talking about storms that are brewing on definitely the Gulf down there by Texas, and definitely even on occasion down there in the West Coast as well. So there might be a specific hurricane season as well. Y'all just might not get as much as we do.
Maybe they just don't call it that.
Yeah, that might be.
We don't get that much of it. I mean, right. And we don't get. I know we have heard of, well, this is a storm, and it's coming, it's leftovers from some hurricane in Mexico. But by the time it gets to us, it's really small. So it's not hurricane. When I was in England, I was so scared. It was so funny. I was on the 4th floor, And the radio said we had hurricane winds. Now, little California girl doesn't know what hurricane winds is really, and how is that different from a hurricane? And I'm on I'm I'm on the top floor, and I'm watching huge chunks of the roof just flying off, and these big pieces of metal flying all over the place. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I went to my English friends. I said, help, help, help. What do we do? Oh, just wait it out. It's not a big deal. I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like, there's these huge things flying through the air, and I've got a whole wall that's window. Oh, Jeanette, it's not a big deal. So I went to a friend of mine who lived on the second floor, who was also from California. And I said, can I hang out here for a little while? She said, yeah, sure. So the wind did finally die down, and everything was fine, and it was no big deal. And then a couple months later, we were on vacation. We had a 3-week break between trimesters, I guess. And about midway through that, they had a little baby earthquake. And it was one that just a little rocker, just rolled a little bit, just enough to kind of wake you up and go, oh yeah, that's fine. So when I got back to school, like, Jeanette, did you feel the earthquake? I'm like, yeah, just a baby one. No. Yes. They're like, no, but the earth moved. I'm like, yeah, it does that. So it really just depends on what you're used to. And, you guys are used to these storms and these hurricanes. And I remember I was in the airport one time, and they had the bathrooms were a hurricane safety zone. I'm like, oh, okay. And I was looking at this huge airport and all the people in it. I'm like, they're not going to fit in this bathroom. If we really have an earthquake, a hurricane, there's no way all these people are going to fit in here. So fortunately, there was no hurricane that day. And, a lot of people are scared to death of earthquakes. Oh my gosh. But really, most of the time, nothing happens. And I know a lot of times with hurricanes, nothing happens. And, with the earthquakes, they're done and over. You guys have hurricane watch and, be nervous and be scared. and that's a whole other ball game. So don't know where this cough is coming from today. I feel fine. So let's see. What are we doing on time? It is 11:37. All right. So let's talk a little bit today. You're going to be enjoying the outside this weekend. One way or another, you're going to be enjoying the outside. And we really need that. Our bodies need that. They need to feel the sunshine. Our eyes need that vitamins. The skin needs those vitamins. It's like vitamin D, right? The best way for us to get vitamin D is to be outside in the sunshine. And there's something magical about summer nights. Now, if you're my age, maybe I just triggered a song in your head. Oh. But there is something wonderful because it gets really hot during the day, but in the night, there's this nice breeze and it cools down and the sky is clearer, and there's just something really wonderful about all the parks. They have pictures in the park, and it really just is a great time to celebrate community, celebrate Mother Earth. She's so amazing. Hey, Mark.
I'm back. The computer was having a moment, as we know it likes to do sometimes and everything. But you'll be glad to know that before the computer had a moment, I was doing research, and I saw that among the names, the closest that I saw to a Hurricane Mark was a Hurricane Marco, and that's not the same as a Mark. And there is no Hurricane Jeanette at all. So there is no Hurricane Jeanette. So your name has escaped the naming as of now. Now, somebody later may add it and replace it, just like they replaced Fiona with Farrah. But for right now, you are safe. There is no Hurricane Jeanette at all. So it's not
I need to not date whoever does the naming then, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that would be a safe thing to do. Don't do that because then they might change the name. They might be like, "Oh, wait a minute, she's been acting up and everything. We've got to call it a Hurricane Jeanette now." So maybe that's what it is.
During COVID, I forget exactly what happened, but I got this story from my ex. It was pretty funny. So, I can be very passionate. You guys have seen that on the show for sure. And I don't even remember what I was worked up about, but I was talking to a friend of mine, and this friend has known me and my ex. We've all been friends for the same amount of time. So anyway, I was talking to her, and I got on my soapbox and I was blah, 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 right, and she was telling him later, Jeanette, she's just so intense. And he's like, yeah, are you new here? And it's like, uh-huh. And I'm not intense all the time, obviously, but I do get passionate about things and about things I'm really passionate about. And I'm like, yeah, I can. And of course, COVID, we were all on edge,
Oh yeah, everybody was on it during COVID. It's all right to be intense and everything. I was actually got into an intense argument on one of our shows yesterday that I did not do good in terms of being a debater, and I consider myself a decent debater, but I wasn't expecting the conversation. So we were doing our news show, and they were saying that they didn't think that the other two folks that are on the show, and there are usually as many as 5 or 6 of us, but they were saying that they didn't think that microaggressions existed. And I tried to give some examples of microaggression, but they weren't quite hearing me and all in that space because they thought it was a made-up term that women use and that minorities use. And I was trying to mention everything from the banking to other things that could, including calling a woman of a certain orientation that they are too pretty to be that orientation. I didn't bring that example up, but I should have brought that example up, or that somebody speaks too properly. And definitely when people clutch their pearls and do other things when certain communities come by, that one I did mention. But there were a couple of other ones that I did not mention that I probably should have mentioned because they were like of the opinion that it is a made up term and does not really exist. But I'm sure you've even run across those in your own life and everything. So definitely I just think that microaggressions don't exist. I don't think is a fair statement, but that's where they were saying. And I can get passionate as well, but I didn't get passionate enough on that particular conversation.
Well, I do think they exist. I do think that there are things that we do involuntarily.
Right.
I'm only 5'2" and I have short hair. Now, this is my own observation of life. Okay. This is just, but if you look at a little 3-year-old and she's got the pretty dress on, the pretty princess dress on, and she's got short hair, you say, oh, she's so cute. You take the same little girl, you take the same dress, and you give her long hair. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a little princess. And the tone of voice, it's different.
Right.
Right? How you look at that little girl is different just because of her long hair.
Right.
Now, that little girl growing up with either short hair or long hair is also looked at that all throughout her life. And how many guys, I know so many guys, oh, I just love long hair in a girl. Mm-hmm. They don't even know why. Do you love long hair?
I've dated folks of both. I think my preference is probably medium to long. And sometimes I would say that is, I personally think a lot of it has to do with your own family history and those that are in your family and everything. And I know that my mom's got fairly long hair, as do some of my aunts and everything. So I'm thinking that is where the preference is, but I've dated folks of both, and I would say that generally it's people that are medium to long, but I'm not prejudiced against either. I've even dated some that have got very short hair, almost to the point of being near bald.
But my point is that we treat it's different, Right. Farrah Fawcett, you would never call her cute.
Right.
She's beautiful. She's gorgeous. She's sexy. You would never call her cute. Mm-hmm. Sally Field, cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a how are we presenting ourselves out there, right? But it's also how does society see us?
Yeah.
And so yes, there are micro aggressions. And I think that you can take this into a lot of different arenas
Mm-hmm.
of, what is offensive. But back to my 5'2" thing. So
Yeah.
I get a lot of guys that call me kiddo.
Mm-hmm.
54 years old. I don't have any parents. Nobody's kiddo.
Right.
However, and I mean, these guys are not that much older than me. They're like 5, maybe 10 years max older than me. But it's a term of endearment. And I could get really upset about it. But I know it's said with love.
Right.
It's fine,
But even that can be kind of tricky with a couple of things that, as you said, that I was thinking about. One is that as somebody that is 5'2", I'm sure that there have been times even in your dating space that folks have tried to put you in the same category as those that are officially little people, because I think the little people cutoff is like around 5.
4'10". I know where the little people. Yes, because my mom was invited to become part of the little people, and she was 4'11". They said she was an inch over, and they would let her in. So I do not fit the. I'm proudly too tall for the little people society.
But I'm just saying, but my question is, when you are dating, do you think that sometimes people are automatically making assumptions that you are in that category because of the height? Because sometimes there are some men that like shorter women, there are some that like taller women, and there are some of those stereotypes that go on in that space as well. And I guess that in some ways, depending on how they handle it, that could be considered some microaggressions as well, depending on how they approach you.
What are some stereotypes about short women? Because I don't know.
You never heard the song "Short Women Have No Fun" or something like that, or "Short People Have No Fun"?
People got enough. Yeah.
And
Like
I said,
long gone.
I don't buy it and everything. And there's the other stereotypes, which can be true, that if you are taller than you and you are shorter than you see the taller person. Of course, you might want the taller person to reach for the item above you. And who knows, the taller person may be like, hey, there's a stepladder over there. But you don't want the stepladder. You want to have the person that is accessible. Actually, that happened to work to me recently. I think they were trying to get a projector or something down, and it was at the top shelf, and they were all shorter. So they were like, hey, Mark, can you come get that? And I was like, sure, no problem. I'm a little bit taller than y'all, not much taller. They were probably, because I think they were maybe in the 5'6", 5'7" range, and they needed somebody that was closer to 6 feet range to get to that, and I didn't have any problem with that. But you also mentioned something earlier about terms and how those terms can be tricky. And one of those terms that can be tricky, because I have some friends that use it regularly, and sometimes they have to let me know that it is a term of endearment. It doesn't mean that it's a term of relationship, because sometimes people will hear the term dear and automatically assume that it is a term of endearment in a relationship sense, but that is not always the case, because I've got a number of friends that will, including lady friends, that will call me dear, and after a while I had to see where their mindset was and their intentions were, and then when we established what that was, we left it in the friend zone, as they call it, and everything. But definitely,
I do have a few guys who, like, listen, they're a little bit older than me, and it's honey and it's sweetheart, and
right.
It's never, there's nothing romantic there. And I mean, even if they want it, it's not going to be, right? But it's not intended to be that. Now, when I was in England, they call everybody love. Like, you go into the grocery store, it's love this, it's love that. I mean, and I think maybe because you guys over there are closer to your English roots than we are in the West Coast. And in the South, there's a lot more of that gentility.
Right.
And I think that you guys have a little bit more of that sweetheart and honey and dear stuff than we do on this side.
No, I would definitely agree with you. And that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of that. And sometimes when the people use the terms, they are using it in, as you just said, that very familial kind of casual kind of respect. And sometimes people don't always realize that that's where it's coming from. That's where sometimes you have to figure out the intent and what the intent is and everything. And once you establish that, then you go and act accordingly. Because I have some friends that use that term, honey and dear, regularly. And I do know that there have been times that they have been called surprised when people were thinking that that was a flirtatious remark and they just meant it as a term of endearment.
Well, and I know some women who get really upset about, you know, somebody just hate, you know, that's just their nature, sweetheart or
Right.
honey, whatever. And it doesn't mean, probably they just forgot your name, honestly. But,
Exactly.
you know, but that's just their nature is to call. And some people get really offended by it. And it's like, you know what? If you're saying it with kindness,
Right.
I don't care.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, I'll take any kind words, you know, that's fine. I don't have a problem with kind words. And that's their nature. And I don't think, and yet I know seen people and well, how dare you call me sweetheart? I'm not your sweetheart. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, you know what? So what if you're somebody's sweetheart for a second? Who cares?
Exactly.
It's not like you're doing, I mean, it's not going any more than that, but why not have that exchange of kindness, you know? And so I think that there's, you know, that's almost a if you're upset that somebody says a word of kindness, that's a microaggression too.
Exactly.
You know, and yet they're taking that as a microaggression. You know, I could take this. He's a dear friend of mine, and it's like he calls me kiddo all the time. Like, okay, do I get upset or do I? You know, I mean, if it really made me upset, I'd say, "Hey, please don't call me kiddo." But it's because I'm small. He's not the only one. You know, it's because I'm small. If I was 5'8", nobody would call me kiddo. You know, nobody would call me kiddo. I'm taller than most of them.
Yeah.
You know? So it's really, I think that we've become more sensitive to a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think it's good. And I think it can also get us into trouble and taking it too far.
No, I agree with you on that.
And I think that there's no way you're not going to offend, you know, as an event planner, somebody's going to go away unhappy.
Yeah, that's very true. Somebody's not going to be happy with something that was done and something that didn't get done. So that's always the case and everything. It's even like when I mentioned, like, yeah, it's like this music that everybody's going to be happy with the type of music that was picked or the artists that were there, or the artists might be offended that the music is too loud. So yeah, there are different things that are going on. The food vendors, there might be not enough of one kind of food or another, so they might go in there and be like, look, I'm a vegetarian or vegan. Y'all got one food truck here that's vegan, if that, and they're not even serving real vegan food because they might have a idea of what a vegan means to them and along those lines. But in that same space that you were just speaking, I know that everybody that does MC and performing, whatever they do in that space, is usually very nervous. I know I'm nervous. I'll be even nervous tomorrow and everything. But I usually, once the activity happens, two things happen. One, the light comes on, and then I become very engaged in what's going on, and whatever butterflies I have disappeared and everything. And the other thing is, I know for a fact, even tomorrow, I will make a mistake or something, and I can sit there and fret over that mistake, or I can just let it float by, ignore the mistake, and keep on going. Because half the time, the people are only half listening anyway, and that's the same with the musicians. And a lot of times, they have, even if they missed a note, unless they accentuate it and bring up the fact that they have missed a note, nobody's going to notice it. I can go back to the CD and be like, that's not the same note he played the last time he played that song and everything. Yeah. So
the only ones who are going to really notice that are like real musicians.
Right.
Like, you know, I mean, my ex, he could pick out songs like crazy. He might go, oh, he played that note a little flat, but it's not going to ruin his enjoyment of it.
Exactly. That's what I meant.
It's like, it's a live performance. Who hasn't made a mistake? You know,
exactly.
He's been off on singing a few times, I'm sure.
Yep.
I mean, I don't hear it, but the you know, we all are human, and that's where, you know, doing a podcast, I've been making some videos. I'm coming up with a course. It's very exciting. So we'll be talking about that soon, I hope.
Okay.
But so I've been making videos, and man, I critique them myself like you would not believe.
Oh yeah.
Now, I can't go back and watch. It's really hard for me to go back and watch. So I'm critiquing myself as I'm going through. doing the performance, but you're, you know, they're like, oh, why did I say that? And then you stop and re-record,
Right.
and, you know, da 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 da. But like you said, and I got to the point where I was like, I've got to edit this, I've got to edit that. And I said, no, we're not doing this. I'm not spending the time, I'm not spending the money on having this edited here. And the thing is, even if it's super polished like that, people don't notice that, or they don't care. What they care about is a connection with you, and
Right.
and do you sound like you know what you're talking about,
Right.
and does this mean something to me?
Right, exactly. That's what they care about. And does it relate to what's going on? As he mentioned the sponsors, is it something that I want to know about, whether it's the other performers or the other things that he is talking about? Does it relate? Does he know about what's going on with the artists and all in that space? And sometimes we get too caught up in what we want and everything. I did a pre-record earlier today with a group of folks for one of our other shows that deals with the gaming world, chess to be exact, and the gentleman had to pick up to deal with his electrician, and he was like saying, so you're going to edit out that part and everything. And as I'm thinking about it now, I'm going like, well, the other people were on there, so that would be almost next to impossible to edit out and everything. So they'll just gonna have to live with that part, because it literally took like all of 2 seconds. So I don't think that's going to get edited out as we're going on, just because it wouldn't make that much sense, and the other people would not be totally cut out, and it would be very blotchy. So it would not make sense to do that. So sometimes you also have to think of the logic of what's going on.
Right. But you know, if I stumble over a word, or if I have to, you know, take a second to think about something, you know what? It's just showing it's just showing humanness, you know. It's okay. It doesn't have to be this perfect speech. And we all remember that teacher that did that, you know. And what did we do? We fell asleep, right?
We fell asleep on The Perfect Teacher. And like I said, I think I told you before, I know I've told other people this before, one of my most favorite moments, and once again, it's another one of those moments of childhood that I remember and everything. And it was when I was in high school and was taking physics, and the woman that was teaching it was from Laos. And so she gave this wonderful example of what was going on. She was given this whole formula and everything, but she was relatively new to the field herself, as she had just graduated college not that long ago, probably like 2 or 3 years before. So she's probably only 5 or 6 years older than I was at that time. And at the middle of the exam, or the middle of writing this formula, she sat there and she's going like, in a very thick Laotian accent, you know, I'm not sure that this is the right formula. And of course, as a 6-year-old, I'm going like, well, if you don't know, how the heck am I supposed to know? You're supposed to be the teacher.
I had a design teacher, and I mean, I was. If I'd been in a different college, it would have probably turned into a drinking game. But it was Juno, and that was her So whenever she got stuck, it was Juno, and it just cracked me up. Now, if I'd been 18, probably it wouldn't have done. But I was 26 going back to get my, or 24 going back to get my design degree, and it just cracked me up. And if I went back now after doing speaking and learning about speaking, but I just sat there like, every time she said her was a lot.
Right.
And we all have our ums.
Mm-hmm.
It was Juno. And I'm like, no, I don't know, because that's why I'm here. You're supposed to tell me.
Exactly. That's the way I felt with the physics teacher and everything. I was like, I think I was 15 or 16, because like I said, it was not that many. And that's the other thing. It was a high math course, and I was not a math whiz. Don't consider myself a math whiz now either, at this particular time of life, and definitely wasn't one at 15. But it was, since it was an advanced course, it wasn't that many of us in the course in the first place. I want to say that class, because on our average class, we might have had 25 to 30 students. That class, there might have been 8 to 10, because there wasn't a lot of people running around taking a physics class. So the fact that she would say this in front of a small amount of us that were considered, I guess, elite for our age and everything, we were all going like, did she say what I thought she said? I'm going to pop off and let you have the close out, but this has been a fun conversation as always.
And I wish you a very, very happy birthday and all the wonderful people who are coming to your party. I hope you enjoy. So I won't sing because I don't have a great singing voice, but I wish you a very, very happy birthday.
I appreciate it. And I definitely will be thinking about you while I'm out there having a good time on tomorrow and all in that space. As a matter of fact, one of my missions today in about an hour is I got to run and go see the barber so I don't look as McGruff and everything. So I'm off to see him in about an hour so I can be prepared for tomorrow and all in along those lines. But definitely look forward to seeing you on next week for another fun conversation. But I'll let you have the closeout right now.
All right. So thank you so much for staying with us today. We've had a lot of fun just talking about all kinds of things. I want to wish you a very oh my gosh, very happy 4th of July and that you celebrate it however you do, whether you're on the East Coast and you've got a lot of revolutionary stuff or it's more beachy over here on the West Coast or somewhere in between. So have a wonderful 4th of July, and we'll see you next week. Well, we will talk about more things, home and healing. Thank you so much. And now I think we're going to go to Kendo Spice because we love her.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.